Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Home Talk. I'm Jerry Landry with The Weathered Shed, and this episode we are going to be showing you how to make some really cool potion bottles for Halloween. So I have here some various bottles in different shapes and sizes that we are going to go ahead and apply some kind of like apothecary style labels to them. All I did was I found these on the internet and they were free printables, and so I just printed them off on regular printer paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut them out and we're going to go ahead and Mod Podge them onto our glass as our first step. I'm just going to use a foam brush, and I have Mod Podge here. That's what I'm using in matte. I love matte finish for projects. And I'm just going to go ahead and get, this is the one we're going to apply to this guy. And you can put it right on the paper, but I want to get a nice thin coat, so sometimes it's easier to control when you're actually just putting it right on the surface. And then I'm going to lay it down like so. I'm going to scoot that aside. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start painting up our bottles. So for this, I am going to be using a true chalk paint. And the reason for that is it's very fast drying. And also I want to get some texture on my bottle. So that is why I'm going to use a chalk style mineral paint, but you could really use anything that you have laying around. So I've got a board here that I just covered with some press and seal, and I'm just going to get out some paint on here instead of digging down into my container. So like I said earlier, I'm not worried about getting paint in on the edges because we're going to be covering most of that up anyways. I know it's a kind of a pretty fancy label, but we're going to make it look even prettier. Get done here. So I'm just literally slapping it on because again, I want to get a lot of texture, and that is what you will get when you use a chalk style paint. The other thing I want you guys to notice, and I'm actually going to add a little bit more to my surface, is we're going to get some crackles. So anywhere there was Mod Podge, when you paint over the top of it and you dry it, you're going to start getting crackles in your paint. So I'm actually going to add a couple spots here, and we're going to add a few more globs of paint. And then I'm going to show you what happens. Okay, so let's watch with the blow dryer here. See how there's crackles all around where the Mod Podge was, and I painted over the top of it? We're going to get that same effect all the way around as I continue to paint. All right, so we got the neck here done. I just got my finger down in here holding it. Now that our bottles are completely painted and dried, our next step in the process is we are going to be creating some decorative molds that we're going to apply around the labels. So I am using Iron Orchid Designs air dry clay and their molds. You can see here, these are beautiful feathers. What I'm going to do is grab some cornstarch. I'm just going to put a little, they are silicone, they are food grade safe, but I always just like to put a little cornstarch in here anyways, just to make them release even that much easier. And we're just going to do these cool little feathers here on the side. We're going to use those on our crow label. I thought that would be appropriate for our crow label. All right, I'm just going to roll it out like this and just push it down into the mold. The one thing that's nice about these particular molds is that they have a micro rim. So you can see as I'm pushing that off with my finger, see that nice clean edge? That is due to the little micro rim that they have. It's a patented feature with this particular product. So you can see how nice and smooth that is. We'll get the little guy next to it there. And you could use, this is Iron Orchid Designs air dry clay, but you can get other air dry clay as well on the market. And then I'll show you how easily these will pop out of the mold. So we'll do these first two here. And I'm just gonna flip it over and roll it back like so. And look at all that detailing. All right, so I have a towel here that I just have rolled up so I can lay my bottle here so it doesn't roll around as I'm applying the molds to the surface. So the glue that I'm going to be using is Tight Bond Quick and Thick. It's a multi-surface glue and I absolutely love it. And I'm just going to be real generous with the glue and just kind of rub it around with my fingers, making sure I get all the way to the edges. And then we're just going to lay this, kind of curving it a little bit around the side there. Just like that. And we're going to take the other one. And you don't have to worry, that glue will dry clear. And we're going to be painting on these anyways a little bit once they've completely dried overnight. You can paint them wet too, and sometimes that creates kind of a unique look too when the clay crackles, because you see that lighter color in the cracks, and then you have the, the paint on the top of it. And then we've got our little guy that's going to go down on the bottom. I'm actually just going to overlap these two a little bit, just like that. And there you have it, a beautiful framework for our label. I've given our bottles some time to dry, and now we're going to move on to the next step, which is giving this some dimension and some depth in the cracks and crevices, especially on the molds, because you really want them to stand out and you want these to look old and aged. So I've decided I'm going to use a waxing technique. So we're going to use two different waxes. We're going to first apply a clear wax, and then we're going to go over top with a dark wax. So we're going to start with our light colored guy here. And I'm just going to get it laid down and cradled in my towel here a little bit. And I've got some clear and dark wax out on my little palette board here. And I'm just gonna get some on my brush. You could definitely just use a rag too if you want to apply this. And I'm going to hit the actual paper label as well as the clay and the paint, all with the wax. And the reason you want to start with the clear wax first is so that your dark wax doesn't basically take over and get to the point where you can't remove it. And we don't want that to happen. We want the ability to be able to wipe off some of the excess so that it's not too dark and overbearing. So you always start with your clear wax first, like that. And then we're just gonna hit it with a little bit of the dark wax. You don't need a ton of this. Like I said, it goes a really long ways. So you can see how that's drastically changing the look of the piece right there. And you just continue on until you get it to how you like it. And again, you can come back with your rag or your soft cloth and wipe some of that back so that the highlights, the high points of the clay, see that? How it stays down in there. Just like that. I'm liking where this one is at, so we're gonna set this aside and we're gonna work on our Feathers of the Crow potion bottle. And for this one, I'm actually going to take another color and introduce it into the mix here. This is a Bohemian Blue chalk mineral style paint. And I'm just gonna get a little bit out in a dish here. All right, so I've got my paint here and I'm just gonna spritz it a little bit with some water. Water that down a tad. Just using an old chippy brush. You can see this has been well loved. Okay. All right, and then I'm gonna start with the feathers rather, not the leaves, the feathers. These beautiful feathers. And I'm just gonna kind of get that down in there. Like so. And then I have a dampened paper towel here. So we are going to kind of wipe that back. You can also spritz this with water if you want, like that. Kind of let it run around. And we don't care if it gets on our label, right? Because we're making this look old, ancient. And even if it runs down the bottle and into those cracks and crevices, that would look cool as well. So you're just basically, see that, how it's like all that detailing from the first round of gray paint, because it went on pretty thick. You've got all that cracking and that detailing. That texture is just gorgeous. Just don't want to let the water sit too long on the chalk paint, because it will start activating and pulling off that first layer. So don't want to get it too wet. Then just continue working around your bottle all the way, placing more color wherever you want it. Again, pounce with your wet rag gently. You don't want to, like I said, you don't want to keep rubbing over the same area, because you will start pulling off that original paint. All right, so I got this one covered really nicely to where I want it. So I'm just gonna do the cork as well, because I want to make sure that that ties in. So I'm just getting a little water on it. And just gonna take my brush. This will almost like dye the cork. You can let that dry and add another coat if you want. You can make it as dark as you want. I'm staining my hands in the process. All right, so we're gonna put these aside and we're gonna move on to our next bottle. For this one, we are just gonna do the same waxing technique that we did previously, except we're gonna do mainly just dark wax. So I already have remnants of the wax on here. I'm kind of gonna just blend the dark and the light wax together. And we're just gonna start in a small area first. And again, you want to pounce down in there into your mold. And then we're going to take our rag and just wipe that back. That's what's nice about a brush, is just the ability to be able to pounce down in those details on the clay, like so. Don't forget your side edges. Continue to work around your piece until you get it how you like it. All right, our bottles are complete and I am loving how they turned out. We'll have a shot here of how they look together. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, my name is Jerry from The Weathered Shed. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Until next time, thanks everybody.